Good morning. Today we solve the number 8, page 154. He say, observe the following figure, then complete with a cross. نعمل observation of this figure, and we complete the table with a cross when each cross means is perpendicular to. When two per line are perpendicular, we put a cross in the case. Use your t-square. We use the t-square. First, we have D1 and D1 are the same lines. Then we work with D1 and D2. D1 and D2, we have D1 and D2 intersect in this point. Using t-square, put D1 on the one side of the two sides of the right angle in t-square by this way, and the vertex of this angle, the right angle, in the point of intersection. We notice that D1 is on the first side, but D2 is not in the other side, then are not perpendicular. D1 and D3 are perpendicular by this, since we have a cross in the case, in this case, D1 and D3, we notice that an angle and a straight angle between the two lines. Now, D1 and D4. When D1 and D3 are perpendicular, that meaning D3 and D1 are at the same time perpendicular, since they are the same lines. So now D1 and D4. D1 and D4. We notice that D1 and D4, when we extended the two lines, are meeting in a point without a right angle between it. So are not perpendicular. Now D1 and D5. The line D1 is here, the line D5 is here. The point of intersection between the two lines is here. Now, testing if we have a straight angle between the two straight lines. We notice that D1 is on the first side of the straight angle of the right angle, but D5 is not on the another, so are not perpendicular. Now D1 and D6, D1, the line D1 and the line D6, when we extended the line D6, the two lines intersect in a point here, but without a right angle, so are not perpendicular. D2 and D1. We notice that D1 and D2 are not perpendicular, so D2 and D1 are not perpendicular. D2 and D2 are the same straight line. Now D2 and D3. This the line D2 and the line D3 is here. D2 and D3, when we extended the two lines, are meet in a point, intersect in a point without a right angle between it, so are not perpendicular. When D2 and D3 are not perpendicular, so D3 and D2 are not perpendicular. D2 and D4. This is the line D2, and this is the line D4. We notice that D2, when we put the line D2 on the first side of the right angle in the t-square, we notice that the other line D4 is on the other side of the right angle in the t-square, so are perpendicular. So D2 and D4 are perpendicular. That's meaning D4 and D2 are perpendicular. Now D2 and D5. D2 and D5, this is the line D2 and this is the line D5. When we extended the two the two straight line intersects in this point. Without a straight line between, without a right angle between it so are not perpendicular. Now D2 and D6. D2 and D6. The point of intersection is here between the two lines. D2 in this side, but D6 is not in this side, so are not perpendicular. Now D3 and D1 are perpendicular, since D1 and D3 are perpendicular. D3 and D2 are not perpendicular, since D2 and D3 are not perpendicular. D3, now D3 and D4. D3 and D4, this is the line D3 and this is the line D4. The point of intersection is here. No right angle between it, so are not perpendicular. D3 and D5, this is the line D3 and this is the line D5. The point of intersection is here. Using T-square, no right angle between the two straight lines, so are not perpendicular. D3 and D6, this is the line D3 and this is the line D6, intersects in this point. And no, using T-square, no right angle between it, so are not perpendicular. Now D4 and D1. D4 and D1, D1 and D4 are not perpendicular, so D4 and D1 are not perpendicular. D4 and D2 perpendicular, since D2 and D4 are perpendicular. No, D4 and D3 are not perpendicular, since D3 and D4 are not perpendicular. D4 and D4, the same line, so we work at D4 and D5. D4 and D5, this is the line D4 and this is the line D5. Intersect in this point. Testing by using T-square, we notice that no right angle between the two lines, so are not perpendicular. Because D5 in this side of the right angle, but D4 is not on the other side. Now D4 and D6. D4, this is the line D4 and this is the line D6, intersect in this point. D6 in this side, but D4 is not in this side, so no right angle between it, so are not perpendicular. Now D5 and D1. D5 and D1 are not perpendicular, since D1 and D5 are not perpendicular. D5 and D2 are not perpendicular, since D2 and D5 are not perpendicular. D5 and D3 are not perpendicular, and since D5 and D3 and D5 are not perpendicular. D5 and D4 are not perpendicular, since D4 and D5 are not perpendicular. Now D5 and D6. This is the line D5 and this is the line D6. Intersect in this point. Using T-square, we notice that no right angle between the two lines, so are not perpendicular. D6 and D1 not perpendicular, and D6 and D1, D6 and D2, D6 and D3, D6 and D4, D6 and D5, D6 and D6. All these lines are not perpendicular, since we show that in the other cases. This is number 8, page 154.